On today's podcast, World's Toughest Mudder race directors Chris Maltbie and Jen Mizono.
This is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome to the World's Toughest Podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's World's Toughest Mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the World's Toughest Podcast.
Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. Thank you for listening. You are awesome. My name is Will Hicks. You can email me, will@theocrreport.com. I'd love to hear from you. Today on our show, Chris Maltbie and Jen Mizono. They have been the race directors for World's Toughest Mudder for multiple years now. I talked with them right after the race in 2023. So this is another it's not archives is the wrong word. It's audio that I've had, and it's not that I've been sitting on it, but I haven't aired it yet. And I was listening to it, and this gives good insight into the race, like what the race directors are thinking, like what's their mindset, what are they focused on while you're out there suffering, like in the planning process behind the race, why parts of it is the way that it is. That is not a correct sentence. I apologize to the school teachers listening. And also, I enjoy talking with them. Chris and Jen have been great for the sport, great for the community, great for the race, and it's good to get their insights on the race. It's kind of a tradition we've done for I don't know how many years now. Right after the race, I talk with the Tough Mudder CEO or the World's Toughest Mudder race director, kind of get their insights into kind of everything. We did a lot with previous CEO, Kyle McLaughlin. We did it with Giles Shader, and it's good to get Jen and Chris on the show. But before we start, this is day 12 of 30 podcasts half September, 30 podcasts in 30 days from the OCR report. That's 8 different podcasts with a new episode every single day. So 30 podcasts for the 30 days of September, featuring podcasts from World's Toughest Podcast, which you're listening to right now, the OCR report, Obstacle Running Adventures, OCR Talk, Fran and Carlo get OCR adjacent, Nitty Gritty Training, Strength and Speed, and Travels with Jack Goris. So every day there's a different podcast, kind of a different take on OCR from all of them. Some of them are training related. Some of them are athlete interview related. Some of them are, I was just listening to the new episode of OCR Talk. He's talking about the upcoming Savage race and kind of like what goes in for the live streaming, like the kind of pre-race talk. If you want to know about race live streaming, OCR Talk is literally the best podcast you can listen to about that. Like what's literally like so much detail, you'll be like, whoa, slow down. Like I'm taking notes here. Anyway, check this out. You can find links to all of them at our Instagram page, instagram.com/or@ the OCR report. And we'd love to hear from you. It's time for some iTunes reviews.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars.
5 stars. Love that. Our first review comes from Alhoff321. WTM recap. One of my favorite pods. Always excited when I see a new episode pop up on my feed. Thank you, Alhoff. Very kind to leave a review. Next review comes from KF Wentz. Great work as always, Will. You continue to give the listeners what they want. Thanks for the WTM recap. Guys, I'm doing it wrong. I got a whole shtick and I'm doing it wrong. Excuse me. Our first review comes from Alhoff. Alhoff writes, 5 stars. One of my favorite pods. Always excited when I see a new episode pop up on my feed. Thank you, all Hoff. 3, 2, 1. Next review comes from KF Wentz. KF Wentz writes, 5 stars. Great work as always, Will. You continue to give the listeners what they want. Thanks for WTM recap. You guys are welcome. Thanks for leaving those reviews back in 2022. You are amazing. Okay, so if you would like to leave a review for the show, would you do me a kindness? Christmas is coming up. I would love an early Christmas present. Here's what you do. If you have first let's do non-iPhone. If you have a non-iPhone, just like pick it up, look at it. Like look at your Android device. Go to your web browser and go to lovethepodcast.com/tough. And you can leave a review there. I'm typing it in as we're typing right now. You can do it too. lovethepodcast.com/tough. Please rate and review in your favorite app. You can just tap on Podchaser. You can tap on Good Pods. And there's also Apple Podcasts. I don't know if you can do that if you're not on an Apple device. Either way, if you're Apple or not, lovethepodcast.com/tough. Real easy way to do it. If you're on Apple, not Android, all you do, pull down and search. Type in pod. That purple podcast app will pop up. Tap that. Boom. I'm doing this slowly so you can do it while I'm talking to you. Type in world's toughest, and then it should pop up. World's Toughest Podcast. There's like our logo times 200. Tap the top one. World's Toughest Podcast show. Will Hicks. And then you can choose the latest episode, which is this one. You're already listening to it, but just scroll down. Boom. Scroll down. Tap to rate. There's 2 places you can do it. You can tap to rate. You leave it 5 stars. Or you can tap write a review. And I will read it on a future episode. If you would take literally 30 seconds to do that, I would be so grateful. lovethepodcast.com/tough or the Purple Podcast app on your iPhone or iOS device. So we talked about 30 podcasts in 30 days. We talked about, you can email me, will@theocrreport.com. You can follow us on Instagram @theocrreport. youtube.com/theocrreport for all your race live streaming. We are in the middle of 6 races in 6 weeks live streaming. You should check that out. If you want to watch some races, youtube.com/theocrreport. We talked about the 7 other podcasts you can listen to. Find links to those on our Instagram page. If you want to support, leaving a review is awesome. I'd love it. That's free, costs you nothing, and it helps us out a ton. But also, if you're like, hey, I want to put a couple dollars behind this. I'm invested. I've benefited from the shows. I've enjoyed the live streaming. I've got a lot of value from the OCR Report. I want to support the sport. Jump on our Patreon, patreon.com/theocr Report. And we would love to have you as a member for as little as $5 a month. You can support the work we do and help us to ensure OCR is here for the next 100 years. It's time to talk with Chris and Jen. Let's go to the phones. Jen Mizono, Chris Maltbie, TMHQ. Is co-race director the right term?
Sure is. I can't do it by myself. I know that.
You were both out there. I feel like you were both out there 24 hours. Is that true?
That is true. We got on site at 8 a.m. and we left at 3 p.m. the next day.
This is not really anything to do with World's Toughest Mudder, but every time when I get back to my Airbnb after World's Toughest Mudder, I feel like I just came back from a day of work, but it's really been 40 hours.
This is correct. My feet look like they've aged 40 years, so much more than 40 hours.
Yeah, 40 hours in steel-toe boots, stomping around the festival and the race center takes its toll. So the hotel room is a wonderful sight when we finally get there afterwards.
It's kind of weird. You're paying for an extra night you're never going to use, but what are you going to do? Pull all your stuff out?
Comes once a year. It's worth a long weekend.
So we are one day past World's Toughest 2023. Your event, you guys put more work into it probably than anybody else here. How do you feel it went?
I think we were super happy with it. I mean, we talked before World's Toughest this year and gave you a little insight into sort of my mentality for the design this year. And I think we delivered on what we said we would do. Whether everyone loved how hard it was or not, I think with time, it'll be kindly viewed. But the feedback we were getting at the race center, what was most powerful for me, is putting 50-mile bibs on people. And some of them had gotten 50 miles before, some of them hadn't, but they were so proud of what they had done on a course like this. They got a 50-mile bib, but they had to put in 62 miles to get it. And that's amazing, right? It's those deep experiences that keep people coming back to Worlds year on year on year. You never want to say last year was the hardest thing you ever did. You always want to come back and prove you could do more. And I think we delivered on that. We were really proud of it.
I think if you were to grade it, there's three buckets that not everyone thinks of, right? You have the operation, all the behind-the-scenes work. You have the experience, what's everyone doing, and then you have the competition. You really only have control of two of the three things, right? Operation, I think everyone knows there was some hiccups in terms of trailers and build. Weather was horrific. Our team is just amazing, agile, was able to get that race started by 12 p.m. Kudos to all of them. A for their agility and being able to pull it off. I think the experience was great. You look at something like Coach's Corner, that's the best Coach's Corner that's ever existed. That rivaled a Miami nightclub. And I think Chris did a great job kind of really leveling up the penalties to make sure that people earned their 50-mile bibs, not just picked them up and it's like, I'll get 75, no problem. And then the competition, I don't think we could have asked for a better podium or even just race in general. And so all around, I just thought it was wonderful.
The one part of the race you guys have no control over, the competition, is the one that a lot of people pay the most attention to, especially if you're not on course, if you're watching it. It was a great race, especially the last maybe 7. Once Michael woke up, great race.
I know. I mean, obviously we're impartial when it comes to the race, but we follow it the whole time when we're back at the race center, and we were just continually refreshing the results to see what was going on, and it was genuinely exciting to watch. Michael having such a strong start to the race and then just stopping, not going back out and getting past and having folks jump ahead of him, and then all of a sudden he's up and he's running laps at like an hour, 4 minutes each, and you could just see him closing ground, and then back into second place. And then even, the 3, 4, 5 spot was so heavily contested. It was fascinating to watch. Josh was going super strong. Joseph reeled him in on that last lap. Past him, I think I heard at Spunky Monkey on the penalty loop. So it's just, that's what you want, is people digging so deep and pushing themselves, beyond. And we always see, no matter what happens on the course, all of the podium winners are so happy with their performances and also so complimentary of each other. You could see it at the finish line. Obviously, Josh was digging super deep, and he didn't know he was in 4th when he crossed the finish line. He thought he was in 3rd. He didn't see Joseph pass him. But today at the brunch, they're hugging it out and laughing about the course. It's just such a good community, from the elites all the way through our age groupers and everyone else that comes out just for their personal goals. Amazing to watch. And the women's race was wonderful as well. Everyone wanted to see what Chris would do on her second time back. Chris said at the end of Worlds last year she didn't know if she'd race it again. Comes back out, absolutely crushes it. And the 2nd and 3rd place spots as well were just, that race was decided a little bit earlier, but you always have to watch. We talk about how the race isn't decided until midnight at least. You had Callie go out and win the sprint lap. Sprint lap almost never podiums in the end. Ran a super strong race. She bumped up when we were doing the slides for the brunch today. Last night I saw her name. I kind of forgot. She was in the middle of her age group podium last year. Comes back and comes 2nd overall. So really great race.
Yeah, I think she's 7th or 8th overall last year. And Callie won the sprint lap, finished 2nd. And Chris was like 10 feet behind her. Chris almost did what Rhea Coble did when, winning sprint lap and then running 90, winning the whole thing. You mentioned Coach's Corner. That one has, I think more than any obstacle in World's Toughest Mudder, that one has evolved from its career. It was like a water stop its first time. That's what's been the story with that obstacle?
Coach has been the story with it. I think he is someone that is not only creative but is passionate, and that's what makes Coach. And if you give him the platform and the ability to do, basically to make his mind into an obstacle, you're going to get some crazy things. But I think it's just been a mentality of how can we make this better? How can we make this more fun? How can we make this look cooler? And with his just ongoing collaboration with Tough Mudder, I can't imagine what will happen next year.
Yeah, it was a really special process this year, I think. Kyle and I probably talked once a week in a conversation that I would only describe as winding about ideas for the obstacle. But, he's just such an amazing creative guy. He always wants to do more, and he really sunk himself into it this year. Every year he's out there for 24 hours. He digs deep and does the DJing. But this year he brought out a sponsor, that he found to do coffee out on course. He found another DJ to come and join him on stage to DJ. He was willing to go out of pocket to help amp up the sound and the lasers and everything he was doing there, just because he cares so much about what he can give to the racers on course. So it was a really great collaborative process to get to where we got. And I think one of the other priorities this year was, not only should it be this really amazing moment on course when you're out there and you just need that little emotional boost, especially overnight, that we all know from Worlds, but also to make it a real obstacle. It was no joke inside Coach's Corner. It was packed with fog and menthol. There was a cargo net climb that wasn't easy to get through. And so it really was a trippy experience, both mentally and physically, that I think, I know Kyle was really proud of. We were really proud of, to give, you're not throwing away an obstacle out there. You've got to work for it still, but it's also so uplifting and so special.
I heard some people were opting to take the penalty burpees, I think, out there.
Yeah, it was 60 burpees. And my understanding is it was so foggy in there at some points in time that you couldn't see much at all. And so sufficiently disorienting to make 60 burpees feel worth it. I don't know if I would ever feel like 60 burpees were worth it, but I heard as much. But for all the challenge in it, it went really smoothly overnight. Everyone was safe, everyone dug deep, everyone did amazing things there. So it's exactly what we wanted.
There's no such thing as an easy World's Toughest Mudder, but there are some where more people tend to get more miles than others. This might have been toward the harder end of the scale as far as years past. Was that part of the plan going into this year?
Yeah, it was definitely part of the plan, and it wasn't part of the plan because we're sadists or we just want to amp it up all the way, right? We could make the course impossible if we wanted to. We could take away penalties altogether and make it must-complete obstacles. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is put out a challenge there that forces people to have a meaningful experience if they're going to achieve their goals, or even if they fall short of their goals. They're going to have to leave every ounce of themselves out on the course. And so, for this year, both with some of the obstacles we chose, but also with the design of the event, we looked back at the whole history of WTM. Once upon a time, hitting 100 miles, people didn't think it was possible. Up until 2013, didn't seem like you could possibly do it. And through the Vegas years, and then Atlanta, there have been so many changes to the event. And so it was an opportunity to look back and see what was really working for us in achieving the goals of World's Toughest, and where it was worth, reverting or digging back some of the old standbys. So the mileage of the penalties, I was looking at the past couple of years, and the difficulty of the penalties really changed the nature of, I think, average mileage. It was a lot of really creative, but also just, less physical penalties that you do right at the obstacle and you move on your course. So a penalty could take you 30 seconds or a minute, and it wasn't really costing you anything physically. You put that against, 14, 15, 16, 17 in Vegas, average penalty cumulative distance for a lap was 2.5 miles. And the reason I think that's important, not necessarily to have 2.5 miles, but to have a lot of, make your penalties really physically demanding, is it incentivizes obstacle completion and really is a game changer in the event. So you look at Austin, who told us he failed 2 obstacles the entire race. His proficiency at obstacles was why he was able to get over 100 miles. I was surprised anyone got 100. He got 105 because he was able to complete every single obstacle out there, which is amazing. And that's ultimately what we want. We want people to train for the race. We want them to come. We want them to pour everything they've got into it. And if the penalties are too easy, if people are just skipping the obstacles because the penalty is clearly an easier path to go, then the obstacles really aren't doing what they're meant to do. So I was really happy with it. I do think it was one of the harder years. I do think this is, the sort of the benchmark we'll use going forward. Not to say it'll be the same penalties or the same penalty mileage next year, but I'm happy with the way it was calibrated this year. We'll keep the obstacle bypass wristbands, which are another, something that didn't exist back in 16, 17, which are also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to strategize in your race, plan for what you don't want to do. Do you use that on the obstacle with the hardest penalty, or do you use that on the obstacle that's the hardest itself? Where's the opportunity to elevate your race? And that's an element of strategy that I think works really well with the World's Toughest format. And I also think the overall difficulty there is just an opportunity to give more universal value to World's Toughest in the broader ecosystem. We had a bunch of Spartan athletes who had never run a Tough Mudder event come up to me at the race center and tell me they wish Spartan would do penalty loops the same way. They were like, absolutely, it needs to be worth it to complete the obstacle. And you put that out there, and we loved it. It made us really want to push and complete the obstacles, and it added that element of success when you could do that. So, yeah, quite happy personally with how it turned out.
So when the Spartan athletes are saying that, what they're saying is they're glad that it not that it punishes obstacle failure, but that it rewards obstacle completion.
Yeah, that's 100% right. It's especially in these longer races, short penalty loops, they don't really add up to much. They just incentivize good runners more than they incentivize someone who, has proficiency at obstacles and is a really well-rounded athlete. What's 100 meters over the course of 100 miles? Not a whole lot, but a half mile, in a 5 mile loop is a big deal. So, they're really complementary, on sort of the balance there. It's a good way for us to strike the balance of not needing to go 100% obstacle completion. That doesn't make sense for Worlds. It would just bump out so many of our athletes, while still, really incentivizing the completion.
Jen, when you guys plan out the penalty loops, are you looking at a total mileage for the course? Is it a case by case, or is that a Chris question?
Yeah. So the way I try to calibrate it is making sure the penalty fits the crime. So an obstacle that's really quite hard should have a really hard penalty to it. The Dingleberries penalty was hard. The Funky Monkey penalty was hard. And then, yes, working backwards, you don't want 5 miles of penalties on a 5 mile loop, but getting up to 2 miles, I think is appropriate, because that assumes someone fails every single obstacle there. So rather than thinking about it in terms of, percentage of the overall course, I try to look at it as like, what are people consistently going to fail? Where's the opportunity? The grappler is an interesting one where it's skill-based. If you went and practice, we release the obstacles in advance, I recommended during the race briefing that people go and Google it beforehand, learn that skill. That's an opportunity to use skill rather than strength or endurance to overcome, basically get to opt out of a half-mile long penalty. So, you sprinkle it in there in different ways so that it's not, the worst penalties aren't all for upper body strength obstacles. You want them to be in there for a variety of things so that one weakness doesn't get exploited, but while still incentivizing people to be well-rounded athletes that can adapt and overcome.
Speaking of grappler specifically, I remember in Vegas, they had grappler, and it was years, it's probably been 7 years since we've had this obstacle, but I don't know if it was a volunteer idea or how it happened, but what we were doing out there, and you probably competed on, if you threw the ball up there, it landed. The volunteers told us as long as there is pressure on the rope, they're not going to pull the rope out. So what happened is the first guy up there would throw the grappler successfully, and he'd get it. And before he got off the rope at the top, someone on the bottom would pull onto it, and then just keep. And then we had kind of like a chain going of people. And I heard that was not an option this year at Grappler. And the reason I think it was not an option is because the race director knows all of our tricks.
That's quite true. I remember, when you're in the heat of the race, you take whatever advantage is presented to you. You should never cheat, but if that's what you're told at the obstacle, you do it. I think we talked a little bit. Unfortunately, we couldn't run Way Too Tough all night. However, we talked, I think, in advance about Way Too Tough back in Vegas, where people would just hand the buckets off to each other so they knew the weight. So clearly we set it up so you couldn't do that this year. Same thing with the grappler, right? It's a team-based event, but there are certain things you all have to do for yourselves. So when you can think like a racer, it helps to sort of snip out those opportunities to short-circuit the system.
I think I heard about the grappler penalty the most. Was there any thought, you talk about having the penalty meet the crime, the Twinkle Toes penalty was a lot easier than the Spunky Monkey penalty. The grappler being skill-based instead of strength-based, did that play into the penalty decision there?
Well, I'll say first that was half the distance of how it was originally marked, and when I test ran, I had them cut it to half distance. So
Chris also has no hand-eye coordination, so
that's true. But I think there was an opportunity, right? We announced in advance. That's why I was pressing in all of the briefings to go and look at it. I was worried about the difficulty of grappler, actually. I thought when we went out there to test it, it felt impossible. And then Giles shows up. Giles knows how to throw a rope from his kayaking days and sunk it on the first shot. When we were out on the course tour during the Unbreakable Pass event, we saw someone sink it on the first shot. So that gave me actually quite a bit of confidence that if you knew how to do it, you could get it. And then we ran a bunch of staff through testing it after being shown the proper technique. So that gave me a good level of confidence that if someone did their homework, practiced and watched in advance, they'd be able to get it. So I felt less bad about having a really difficult penalty out there. And it was one of those rare opportunities where it wasn't a strength thing, right? It's so easy to, for all of the opportunity on obstacles to come from strength. And that wasn't. That was a skill-based thing. I always used to love that. Back in the Vegas days when we had the cliff, I was always so impressed. Like, I hated the cliff. I did it every time. It also had a horrendous penalty, but I loathed it. If there had been a simple penalty there, I would have taken it every single time. And I used to look at the elites in those years, like Ryan Atkins. Like, I don't know that Ryan loves heights, but he's prepared himself to jump off that cliff and swim straight across. Like, same thing, watching videos, your live stream, Austin at Grappler, chucking up the rope and getting it. So Austin did his homework. Austin threw it up. That has nothing to do with his incredible endurance and his incredible obstacle proficiency. He did his homework and figured it out. And I think that's one of the really cool things about Worlds. Like, there's multiple ways to test people beyond just pure athletic prowess. And so it felt like a long penalty there was warranted.
Did we see any difference between men and women on the grappler? Was it?
So I'll admit that I didn't get to spend much time out on course because we were at the race center, but I didn't hear that there was a tremendous, difference there. I know I saw a video of men and women completing it, plenty. So I think it was roughly equivalent.
Jane, what was some of the feedback you got at the race center overnight, or maybe at the end of the race on the course?
Number one, these penalties really suck. Really suck. We weren't kidding when I'd say in the top 3 questions once we got into the morning was, is Michael out? Did he drop out? Did he drop out? We got that quite often, and we kept on telling them, we know as much as you. He has not started his next lap yet. That was a pretty common question that came in. But overall, it just the usual. What I like about Tough Mudder in general is you get people that are just being honest about, hey, you might want to rebrief this volunteer on if you need to throw the hook first or throw for the grappler first and then take the loop, or you have to use your bypass wristband. And so we get little feedback like that so we can tweak. Our wonderful volunteers have to learn a lot right when they get to site and to the obstacle. And so all the feedback and how we can make things more efficient or rebrief someone or make things better, that's probably the spread feedback across the night.
Big change to the Golden Carabiner or the challenges, however we're calling it officially this year. How did you think that went this year?
I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, I thought it was a great way to sort of de-link it from the competition itself, and that just opened it up for anyone to come. This community is so passionate about any challenge we put out there, so it's really amazing to see people roll in, tired, overnight. They've been taking hell on the penalties out there, and they stop to, roll the dice and take a shot of hot sauce that, is going to leave their mouth burning for the next couple of hours, or shove their head into a bucket of ice, or anything else we can do. So it's a fun way for us to give that nod. I think whenever we're designing those, I think back to 2011, 2012 era Tough Mudder, when we would have stuff like eat a habanero and then jump into a pit of ice. Just like the weird stuff that's designed to mess with people outside of just being, strength based or anything else. I think it's such a part of the Tough Mudder DNA. And, in that context, I always think Worlds is such a distillation of what Tough Mudder stands for in general. So it's an opportunity to just, over the course of one very long weekend, serve all of what Tough Mudder is about on a platter for the community to really bask in.
And I think Tough Mudder is tough, but it's also fun. That's what separates us from Spartan. There's not a whole lot of fun over there, right? In terms of the brand and the energy and the people and the community. And those challenges, I think, are a way for the course to remain hard with little silly things like morning wood as a penalty, but also you can keep a little bit of that fun in between laps and try to memorize 5 colors written in 5 different colors in the right order and see if you can get it or not, right? And I think that's important. It keeps me smiling at the race center for 24 hours at least.
You were kind of walking a tightrope because this year we wanted the open waivers to be able to compete in the competition, but you wanted to have stuff like the fun challenges. And I feel like the patch reward system, it's a patch, and they're nice patches. They're cool patches, but they don't affect mileage. You're not skipping any obstacles, and it was a good marriage between the two options there.
Yeah, I think we were really happy with it, and it was interesting. For the first time, we did see contenders coming and doing the challenges when they weren't available to them last year. I don't know if we saw any elite contenders, but we definitely saw a good number of contenders come over. And I think on the flip side of that, we saw a lot of open participants deep in the competition to win overall. I actually think we had a couple of the podium winners were open racers, which goes to show, that's what it's all about. It's not about anything but what you can do on the weekend. So we were really pleased to see, athletes in all categories come. And it was kind of funny, actually. We were at the race center during check-in on Friday, and you could tell when we had Spartan athletes who had never come to a Tough Mudder before come up, and they were really nervous because they had registered as they had registered as open because they weren't eligible for a contender elite, and they were like, we really want to race. We really want to, be a part of the competition. Can we switch to elite? Can we switch to elite? And I was like, don't worry about it. It's one big leaderboard. All you have to worry about is what you do on the course. And the joy you could see blossom in their face when they knew they were going to be in the thick of it. It's so much what Tough Mudder's about, right? It's so open. It's so community-based. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you run 100 races with us or if this is your first one. Go out, put on your best performance, take all of the punishment we can dole out, and whoever comes out on top comes out on top.
And I think Chris is a good example of that, right? Chris has run 90, 95 miles at Worlds, was in an open bib when he did that. I think of 2013 Worlds when Ryan Atkins came out and hit the podium. No one had any idea.
No one knew who this guy was.
No one had any idea who Ryan Atkins was. I think Chad Trammell as well kind of came out to a Worlds and just had over 100 miles one year. And so when you just have this underdog, it's all of a sudden really cool to say, who is that? That's not even on our radar. And I think that's really fun. And so I'm really glad we've made that change to just open it up to anyone to be the next World's Toughest winner,
I love every year. It seems like every single year we have someone we've never heard of in the top three. Maybe even two. Like Aaron Rost, out of nowhere, second place, 2 years in a row. The one unified leaderboard is clearly, it seems to be like the best model. Spartan is also going to that next year. Good reaction from the community. So I think it's another great, not so much a change for Tough Mudder, kind of going back to its roots of the leaderboard for World's Toughest.
Yeah, I think the through line, right? Obstacle course racing in general is in such an interesting space where it's a huge sport in one way, and going to the Olympics and all of this great stuff. But it's also niche and has these, such passionate communities around it. I don't know for sure. Like, I don't think track and field has a community as passionate as Tough Mudder has, that you see at World's Toughest, or that Spartan has, that you see at like big Spartan events. And so I think it's really important, right? When you want to get people into these passionate communities, lots of tiers and qualification parameters and all of this, it's like, it doesn't feel quite right. It is a sort of weird sport where someone that shows up and can take a beating has the opportunity to rise up and, become a legend in the sport. Or not, or someone just waltzes in. We had one of the athletes that came and really wanted to switch from open to elite, who had never run a Tough Mudder before. He came out and he put in a blazing performance till about midnight, and then came to the race center and was like, I misjudged it. World's Toughest is way harder than I thought it could be, and I'm going to swallow my pride on this one. Here's my chip. I can't finish this race, but I'm going to be back next year. And that's amazing too, right? It's really important that, we be able to put front and center what the event's all about.
Yeah, it's the world's toughest Mudder. It's they announced. Oh, go ahead. They announced that Central Florida next year, back to the same weekend as kind of previous, second weekend in November. Are there any way too early hints you can give us for World's Toughest 2024?
There will be good access to international airports. That's one of our parameters. Obviously the date changed by popular demand, I would say, but also my own personal preference is just a few things. It was sitting Trifecta World Championship and World's Toughest were on top of the same weekend this year. That's why Ryan wasn't here. Ryan had considered coming to Worlds this year after a couple of years hiatus, but they were on the same weekend and he was going to Sparta. So it deconflicts those. Also, it's just been on the second week in November for a really long time. So we had scheduled conflicts this year, so we brought it up, but we're happy to move it back to its rightful place there. Also keep it off of daylight savings time, which, although it wasn't the issue that I think everyone thought it might be, was certainly one more thing to try to, you had to keep in the plan.
We had to explain that so many times during the live stream.
Yes. Our elapsed time clock that we had at the race center, we had pointed out as being wrong many, many times, and we had to explain what it was. And yeah, I think we're excited. We're excited to go back to Florida. East Coast is a very good spot for World Toughest, I think. It was great when it was in Jersey, and I think it'll be good down there in Florida because we have so many mudders come over from the UK. It's a much easier flight. I can promise better airport access this year, which is, again, a huge deal. Pensacola Airport, when we were in Atmore last year, says it's an international airport. Not to throw shade, but it's in heavy air quotes. You've got to transfer several times to get there. We almost didn't get Giles there, I think, last year. So better access there, great hotels in the area, and hopefully we'll have more details soon to give out on exactly where, so people can start to book their travel and their hotels and all that good stuff.
So we don't know the exact venue or exact city yet, but is the airport, Central Florida is near Orlando, is that the biggest international airport in the area?
Yeah, we should have access to both Tampa and Orlando. We're
Okay.
looking at an area roughly equidistant between the two, but Orlando, obviously a huge travel hub, so it's a great spot to be able to fly into from just about anywhere.
I brought my wife and daughter to World's Toughest for the first time this year, and they spent the time when I was, I wasn't running obviously, so they weren't out here, but they went to lots of Dallas tourist stuff, or Granbury tourist stuff rather. So it'll be fun out there. There's a lot of, family theme parks and stuff.
I will say everyone was very, very nice here, Granbury in general, and I think we got a lot of feedback from participants that they just loved the area. It was really great.
Did you see the billboards they put up for us, or the welcome World's Toughest Mudder to Granbury?
We did. We didn't know those were coming, and then we were getting texted photos of billboards on the side of the road. So, yeah, Visit Granbury has been great the entire time, super welcoming to us. Somehow, we don't know how, we think through telepathy, they left little gift baskets on all the staff beds at the hotel welcoming us, and they figured out on their own how which chips were my favorite and which chips were Jen's favorites. It was miraculous. So they've been super welcoming, great community here. I know the community dinner on Friday, everyone had great things to say about the venue. I believe we're going back there in a couple of hours for the bar crawl. Lovely downtown. It's been wonderful.
Love the downtown. Super cute. My wife's like, yeah, we're going to, me and my daughter, my daughter's 10 years old. They went shopping and did the, wife and daughter tourist thing in Granbury. They loved it.
Well, I mean, just the access here as well, right? It's about an hour from the Dallas airport. But once you're out here, there's tons of hotels, tons of Airbnbs, there's restaurants. You're from downtown to sites, 15 minutes. From downtown to where we're at right now at the brunch is 5 minutes. I mean, that's great. It's such a part of the experience. I think it's one of the things we've really missed since the days in Lake Las Vegas, where you just kind of rolled into the Westin and rolled back to you were right there. And once people are in, they're in. It's, I don't know, this weekend for many, many years has essentially taken over my life and many of our lives, right, in the best way possible. You come in Thursday, you're there Friday, there's so much energy on site, you're loading in. Everyone goes through hell, whether they're working or running over the weekend. And then Monday morning you get up and you're sleeping and you bounce your way over to the brunch, and then it's community time and chat and to reflect on the performances. It's a lot of fun. We're really happy here, and we're excited next year for something similar in Central Florida.
Not to turn this into a commercial for Granbury. My wife and daughter, they went to a drive-through animal park. Like the giraffes stick their head in the window, and it looked like a scene thing out of Africa. Like you drive through and wild animals are all around.
Well, I know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah, visit Granbury.com, I'm sure. Or whatever, Google it, you'll find it. Any last thoughts on World's Toughest 2023?
I'm just really sad that no one found Chris's race director hat on course, but
What happened to your hat?
I was out on a course tour, and my race director hat popped out of the UTV, never to be found again. So luckily we had backup race director hats.
Sure, well, very important.
Yeah, but I did put out a PSA at the race briefing to see if anyone from the 1,000 people we had on course could find it, but it's in the bottom of a ravine somewhere. Have to get a new one next year.
To be fair, that's kind of a one-of-a-kind souvenir.
That's true. I'm not sure someone didn't find it.
well, Christmas is coming soon, so
Do you need a new hat for Christmas, Chris?
I do. I would love a replica of the one I had. It was great. It was a cosmic cowboy hat.
Oh, the glowy one? Did it glow along the edges or no?
I don't know. I never saw it at night.
I don't think it glowed, but it did matching adjacent things when I had my cosmic cowboy hat on. So other than that, it was good. Good snacks, good race director hats, good backup race director hats, good energy. Staff was happy. Participants, I think, were happy. Town's happy. Everyone's happy. You're happy. Your wife's happy. Your daughter's happy.
I love this weekend. It's I look forward to it every year, and plan to be here this or wherever for the duration. So, Jen and Chris, thank you for another great event, and we'll see you next year.
Yeah, thanks, Will.
Special thanks to Jen and Chris for appearing in this episode. Well done, you two. Come back anytime. Another banger. All killer, no filler. Day 12. Are you listening to the other podcasts? Hope you are. 30 pods in 30 days. What is your favorite episode so far? let me know in a review on Apple Podcasts, and I will gladly read it on a future episode. We broke it down for like 5 minutes. Like, hey, here's how you leave a review. You got no excuses. Can you, I would be grateful. It would be a favor. If you enjoy the content, I hate it when people call it content. I'm out there making content. Makes it sound just like empty calories, right? If you enjoy the episodes, I would love to hear from you. Leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Shoot me an email, will@theocrport. Shoot us a message on Instagram. We get lots of messages, so email is probably a better shot. You can also sign up for our text program. You want a deal of the day via text, OCR shoes or socks or watches, protein powder, whatever, discounts, special deals, our favorite products. Find a link on our Instagram page, OCR Report text message group. 12 down, 18 to go. We're almost halfway through. Love this, guys. It's flying by. It's a blast. I will talk with you soon. Go spend time with someone you love.